All right guys, what's been going on? Pete with Auto Repair Tips. Got a 07 Jeep Commander. Customer's complaint is feeling vibration and some brake noise. We're going to check all the tires and make sure there's no belts broken in the tires, and I'll show you how to check and change the brakes if necessary. All right guys, after test driving it, it's definitely not a wheel bearing. It does have a roar and a bounce to it like a wheel bearing. But what's happening is, if you look at the tire here, the outside of the tire is worn and the inside of the tire is starting to come apart where the belts are. If you take your hand and put it on the tire and spin the tire and rub it, you can feel the lumps in the tire. What's happening is, as he's driving along, he's feeling that vibration and he's hearing that roar and he's thinking it's a wheel bearing, but it's definitely not a wheel bearing, it's just a bad tire. All right, let's get into checking the brakes out. All right, I'm gonna show you guys a little trick. If you look right inside here, this is your brake. If you look right here, this is the slide that goes up into the brake. Look how close it is to the rotor. So the brake noise they're hearing is definitely coming from the front. The further this brake is out to the end of that slide, the more pads you have. The further the brake is in this way, the less pad you have. All right guys, you see me take tires off a million times, so I'm not gonna explain it. If you're at home and you don't have a lift and you're using a jack, make sure you use a jack stand, safety first. That's your caliper, that's your caliper bracket. First thing we're going to do is remove the caliper. All right, on this Jeep, there's two bolts holding the caliper on. They're 14 millimeter, one's at the top, one's at the bottom. Get a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver usually works best. Pry the caliper off. Sometimes they come off on their own, but a lot of times they don't. And we're going to pry it off like this. All right, get the caliper off, set it aside. When you get it off, look at your pistons, make sure there's no leaking fluid around it, and everything looks pretty good. Pull the brakes off. That's your wear indicator. That's the noise they were hearing. What that does is, as your pad starts to wear out, that'll touch up against the rotor and you hear metal on metal, but that's what you're hearing. All right, we're gonna get some pads and some rotors ordered because the rotors are definitely warped. If you feel them on the inside here, you can feel how warped they are, and it's not enough to turn. Sometimes you can turn a rotor with a brake lathe. This one here you're not going to be able to do. It's not enough to turn. All right guys, anytime you're changing your brakes on your car, always take a second to look around. Look at your brake hoses, make sure they're not cracked. Look at the lines to make sure they're not broken nowhere. Check your sensor connections, check your shocks, make sure they're not leaking, and just look around. Always do a visual. That's a smart thing to always do. All right guys, these are the brakes we're using. They're a good brand. There'll be links down in the description. Comes with your hardware, and it comes with your brake. Look at the difference in the wear indicator, like where that one is, as opposed to where that one is. It's definitely a difference. This is the rotor. There'll be links down for the rotor also. Whenever you put a new rotor on, remember, use brake clean. It always comes with a little bit of grease on it, keeps it from rusting. All right, let's get them on the car. All right, anytime you're putting a brake rotor on, you gotta remove the caliper bracket. And on this 07 Commander, it's a 21 millimeter bolt that holds that bracket on. All right, take a second before you install the brake pads to check your slides. Make sure they slide in and out smooth. If they don't, you want to take them out, clean them, and grease them and put them back. All right, before you go back with the new brakes, you want to make sure you use brake caliper grease. You're gonna put a little bit here, here, and here, and here. And it just takes a little bit, just a little dab. You don't need to go crazy with it. This is also what you will use on the slides if they were sticking. A little trick on pushing the pistons in. They sell a bunch of different tools out there. I've been using this one for 40 years. Just take your old brake, stick it there. This is a wood clamp, metal clamp, whatever you want to clamp with it. And just push it in slow. Most people don't check their brake fluid, so when you're pushing it in, it's not going to overflow because half the time people don't check their brake fluids. Anyway guys, I'm going to give you a pro tip on something. Good operating system that doesn't have any fluid leaks in it. If you go to check your brake fluid and you see that your reservoir is low, most likely you got one of your brakes are low, front or rear. Also, when you're pushing the caliper in and you look at the pistons, if they go in nice and smooth, you know you're okay. But if you're sitting here pushing on it and they will not go in and they're fighting you, most likely you have a sticking piston in your caliper. Sometimes these things fight you. Just gotta have patience. Don't get frustrated when you put them on and something doesn't go quite right. What's he worried about, Bob?
Getting up there to paint the roof. It ain't like the last one, he had a bar he could stand across. I told him, bend over, I'll get the tall ladder, just reach over. He will slip out. I said, I'll hold it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a catastrophe. Hey, this is gonna be a tip. Make sure you always start these by hand first. Never just go right in with an air ratchet or a ratchet or anything. Always start them just finger start. Make sure your threads catch correctly. Once you get 2 or 3 threads turning, you're good to go. All right, another tip for you. Make sure when you first get in your car, after replacing your brakes and you push these pistons in, you pump your brakes 2 or 3 times. Because if you don't, what's gonna happen is you're gonna put it in reverse or put it in drive and you're gonna go to hit the brake and the car will not stop. So make sure you pump that brake a couple times. All right guys, I already cleaned the brake rotor before I put it on, but by me handling it, I had some grease spots in it I want to get off on the outside. Now that we're good and clean, it's ready to roll. All right guys, appreciate you watching. Catch you later.